we were interacting with police, even as a student leader after that, and or in the course of time. And when I got to political positions in my political party, the ANC, I got to interact a lot with police because of the dynamics in that province at that time for a long time. And then as well as when I became MEC and became Premier. I've been interacting with police for quite some time at different levels.
So you have both experience of the police, with the police, the way the police conducted themselves at the time when you were an actively involved student, as an activist. So on the one hand, it's how not to police, and on the other hand, post-1994, hopefully you had a better experience.
Yes, I confirm that.
Yeah.
Including getting to experience an arrest in the hands of police. It all happened at that time.
So did you get to know Lieutenant General Mchunu during this period when you were MEC, when you were Premier?
No.
You didn't get to know him at all?
No, not at all.
Who would have been the Provincial Commissioner of Police when you were Premier?
At some point, there was Ngiti. At some point, General Ngiti. That was before. After I became Premier, I can't remember who it was, up until Mamunye. Yes, Mamunye, General Mamunye, Lieutenant General Mamunye, who got appointed more or less at that time when I was Premier. We're working with them.
And your relationship with the Provincial Commissioner and the police at the time?
I would take it that from my side, the relationship was very good. I would take a phone, call her. I would report things when there were things to be reported. We would meet as well. So the relationship was good from my point of view.
Who would have been the Minister of Police at the time?
Minister of Police, there were different ministers during that time. I think we started off with Minister Nathi Mthethwa. And then I think Nathi Nhleko after that, and then Mr. Mbalula after that. So they all had, but I knew that at some point there was also Charles Ngakula in political circles. Before I got to government, I did interact with him on various matters in the province.
Now, once you were appointed as Minister of Police in the Government of National Unity after June 2024, you would no doubt have oriented yourself with, what your portfolio is all about, and so on. No doubt, that's one of the first things that you would do, isn't it?
Yes.
So do you want to just discuss that? You deal with it in your affidavit at paragraphs 16 to 18. You can either read it, or if you want to refresh your memory, or if you want to speak from memory, you can tell us what your orientation was like.
Yes, I did got, after being sworn in, sought to have a meeting with the leadership of police in the country, just for orientation, starting off with meet and greet, look at each other in the face and get to know each other very well, as it happened in the office there. That was the start of the relationship, a working relationship with top officials in the police management.
So at paragraph 18, you say that my orientation was, paragraph 18, page 9 of your statement.
Yeah.
My orientation was extensive and ended only this year. Some of these orientation briefings touched on matters relevant to the National Political Killings Task Team. You refer throughout to that task team as the NPKTT. In one of the discussions we had around November 2024, I recall the National Commissioner clarifying to all present, that's to you and the Deputy Ministers, that the NPKTT was not a formal unit, but a task team. This to me was obvious because the NPKTT was a task team and not a unit. The important part about what he said was that the intention of the NPKTT was to evolve to a dedicated murder and robbery unit. I will later on demonstrate that the National Commissioner withheld information from this committee. He was aware of a work study that was undertaken and signed by General Satoli, the former National Commissioner, in June 2019. The work study disbanded the NPKTT and resuscitated all the specialized units, including the murder and robbery unit. This occurred before I came into the position. Mine was to give effect to the work study outcomes. So you confirm, having said this, do you want to elaborate, to expand before I ask you a few questions about this?
Yes, I confirm that this is my statement as read, and would want to elaborate by saying that I made it my duty after I got appointed that beyond interacting with individual police officers, especially the National Commissioner, as part of my orientation, and interacting with them as groups as they would organize, that I would go out of my way, understand some of the things from documents, from interacting with other people. And one of the people I met, of course, was former Minister PKTT during that time, who did an orientation, handed over a file to me, outlining things, some of them that were on course, others that I would need to deal with, including what the portfolio entailed in terms of various committees of cabinet and all of that. And of course, other people, as they would have wanted to meet me to advise here and there. It happened like that. And I must say I got a lot of support. And I thank all those people who interacted with me at that time, including in particular National Commissioner and his deputies. They were kind, they were open, they were interactive and cordial relations that they sought to develop and I sought to develop. But of course, I did become aware, as I say, of other things which wouldn't have been necessary to then say, let's discuss this and that. Just things that would have been happening in the department in that particular way. And of course, in this instance, later on, I familiarized myself with through meetings. So our orientation became orientation, but at the same time, it became discussions. And in some cases, during those discussions, we took various decisions. So it was not always up to the end of the year, just a question of sitting and listening. We were very interactive together with the two deputy ministers, asking questions, but also opening up and leading discussions, but also in some cases taking decisions when we felt we needed to test our ideas and what we had. And later on, I did become aware of this particular issue of units, of task teams, the difference between task team and the unit, and the names of such, and including the National Political Killings Task Team, and the history and background and all of those things. So we got to know those things up to end of the year in various meetings.
I think it would be expected of any new or a minister coming into a new portfolio that's I suppose that's why you use the word orientation specifically. Or to orient means just to familiarize yourself. And you would rely on people telling you how things work before you get to grips with it, and you can start asking your own questions. So that would have been expected in the first period. But what I want to ask you to comment on is in that second sentence of paragraph 18, you use the word touched. You said some of these orientation briefings touched on matters relevant to the NPKTT. That seems to indicate that it was very superficial. There wasn't any sort of deep, meaningful discussions or consultations on this particular aspect that you mentioned. You just touched on it. It almost seems to indicate it was just on the surface. Your comment?
Not really. As it started, we were quite superficial, like what are the branches or if I call that, or in terms of police, what are the divisions, for instance, what are the units who had SWAT, just superficial. But then we would have another round, much more intense, and then we started discussing separate things like support services alone. We started discussing crime intelligence alone, started discussing other matters alone, like Vispol and so on. So it went on and on as we moved on with the year up until this year. So we would have started in a superficial way, but as we went on with our work, we got to discuss things much more intense. And in this instance, we would go on to discuss, for instance, somewhere in November, the National Political Killings Task Team, like we would discuss other teams or other units much more than we had had at the beginning, beyond just mention. That's why in those meetings we were then able to have opinions of our own as ministry to say, look, this is how we think or believe we should move forward with these particular teams, including the National Political Killings Task Team.
We're going to get to November 2024, and Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, also to link this to the evidence given by General Sabia, where he had mentioned that this had been discussed in November 2024, you will recall that he was challenged on that because it hadn't been mentioned previously, and that General Masemola, the National Commissioner, said that there was no discussions about the PKTT at all prior to the Minister's directive on the 31st. We had since inquired about this and asked for minutes of meetings, and I am going to refer the Minister in due course to bundle to volume 4, which is exhibit bundle 4, and you'll see there was a meeting on the 1st of November, and it's at pages 163 to 177. But we'll deal with it in a bit more detail shortly. That's the meeting, Minister, sorry, that you're referring to?
That's one of the meetings.
Yeah, there were 3 meetings in November. We asked for the minutes of those meetings. The only minutes which we actually received from the National Commissioner's office were the minutes of the 1st of November.
Yes.
So I don't know whether you can access the minutes of these other meetings.
Not yet.
It would be helpful if you could.
Yes, not yet, but we know we held a meeting again on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Quite a larger meeting, and we had a discussion on this. I made statements in that meeting, which are in the minutes of the first. But I know I made statements also in the other meeting. The National Commissioner made statements in both meetings as well.
So just before we get there, before your appointment at the end of June of 2024, or shortly after, did you have any knowledge of the existence of the task team? When I talk about task team, I'm talking about the NPKTT. Yeah.
Well, I did in a way, in the sense that I would have served in cabinet from 2019, and there would be reports in cabinet with the relevant or from the relevant minister, and there would be other discussions, related discussions. But as minister, I'm above average about issues affecting government, because we do meet as cabinet from time to time, where you listen to other colleagues making reports or doing reports in various platforms inside and outside cabinet. So you get to be aware of what's happening in that department, even if it's not necessarily a department that you are heading. And in that way, I was in a way knowledgeable in that sense about the existence of some units, even though I couldn't name all of them at that time, as it were.
But you would have been aware of a political killings task team, in fact, when you were Premier.
Yes.
Or shortly afterwards, you gave evidence at the Morani Commission.
Yes, I was aware.
And one of the recommendations from that Commission of Inquiry was that such a team be established.
I was aware even before I became Premier in 2013 of what police were doing with violence and aspects of violence in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. I know, for instance, that there was a task team that was established in the province in 2014. I know there was another one that was established in 2016. And I know that there was then this one. By the time this one was appointed in 2018, I was at that time working at full-time at Lutula House, headquarters of the ANC, but I was aware that I was aware of those developments. That was before I got appointed as minister in 2019 in the first place.
Because the president made an announcement in the National Assembly, I think it was in May 2018, here in this National Assembly, that the situation warranted a special task team to investigate these political murders in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and they must investigate and bring the perpetrators to justice. Yes. I don't know if you were present when that announcement was made here in the National Assembly, or you became aware of it.
Well, I know that in 2019, the State of the Nation address, the President did make statements on the need for specialized units in subs to deal with what was happening at that time in the country, and that it was agreed that there would be those specialized task teams. Generally, and later I became aware that indeed relevant minister did start processes of responding to the calls that were made at that time. So I know that there was a particular study that was gone into in that year, 2019, to respond on the call that the president had made, that there is now a need to have specialized task teams, specialized units in subs to deal with various categories of crimes in the country in a much more coordinated, much more organized and resourced manner. And that study was indeed undertaken. But I know that when it was completed, already management of police, and I imagine with the minister leading, they were then entertaining ideas of saying, well, in 2018 we established another task team. We now have completed a study that seeks to rise above various task teams, which in their view were not necessarily impactful as they would have wanted them to be in terms of combating crime in the country. And they wanted to take the response of government as far as this is concerned to another level. Hence the study, hence then the decision to establish those specialized units in a coordinated way.
So were you aware that this interministerial committee had been appointed or established by the president to coordinate this effort of addressing the political killings in KwaZulu-Natal, that interministerial committee being the Minister of Police then at the time, who would have been Minister Pele, and the other ministers of intelligence, state security agency, defense, justice and constitutional development. Those in defense, they in that cluster. Were you aware of that, or did you become aware of that committee?
Yes, I became aware that there was an interministerial task team that was established as an intervention by the president in 2018, and he established that. What what I then came to know later is that the intervention, the political intervention by the president, especially after one incident or at the time of one of the incidents in KZN, the president directed or commanded that there must be a mechanism to respond to the problem, and appointed the interministerial task team or interministerial committee who were tasked with that particular task of developing or establishing a mechanism to respond to the call at that time. And they then established a second tier, which was a steering committee, which I would imagine they established a third tier at an operational foundational level of people who would operate, and that was under a lieutenant general who was deputy national commissioner at that time. So the intervention that the president wanted to see and finally saw was a kind of a three-tier kind of intervention when it was completed and started operating as it started, and then got to be known as the National Political Killings Task Team. So it referred to that kind of three-tier, each one clearly identified interministerial, and then the second tier being the steering, and then the operational one right on the ground of people who were operatives. So that was a complete mechanism that the president set up to deal with that incident of Mr. Makata, Mchunu, and other matters that got referred to them later, but it was in direct response to that particular incident, among others that had happened just before that one. And it was a concern to the president. That is what then happened, which would then be assessed or evaluated from time to time to look at impact and other aspects thereof.
Now, you mentioned that must one accept that you were briefed on this, on how the team was, or the unit, I think, would you prefer to call it a unit?
I prefer to.
Would you prefer to call the task team a unit?
No. I actually must express a worry that when Major General Van Rooyen was called, I think, to the Madlanga Commission, and she was asked a specific question: is there a difference between a unit and a team, task team? She, to the best of my collection, said there's no difference. I got very worried because throughout the orientation and so on, up to when I was given leave, there's always been a clear distinction between a task team and a unit. And as a practice in subs, the units become part of the organogram. And that includes that unit that was Katomena task team. I can't remember the exact term that they used, but that one was a unit, meaning it was part of the organogram. But this one, the political task team, has never been part of the organogram, including when we dealt with the organogram under my leadership after I got appointed, because under my leadership, what we did is we took the strategic plan and the annual plan. We started that. And we came together to say, what is the meaning of this in relation to this, the organizational structure, the current one of SAPS? And we reviewed that. We went to a thorough process of reviewing the organizational structure with a view to aligning it with the strategic plan of the department, following the imperatives of the 6th or 7th administration with its 3 priorities. We had a thorough discussion.
When would that have been?
I may have the dates here when we had there would be various dates, but all I know is that in May this year, there's been a signing off of the new organogram that we started discussing last year. And it took months before we could complete it and make it ready to go to negotiations. But it has been signed off this year. And so that kind of process that we went to.
So can I just help us understand, Minister? So